Well, Jake Paul's attorney says he was out of state and not at his Calabasas home during that raid today. The FBI says they're investigating allegations of criminal acts. Today, YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
The Paul brothers just got raided by the FBI, and according to multiple sources, they tried to flee the country before federal agents could arrest them. We're talking about a full-blown federal investigation into what might be the biggest fraud scandal in modern boxing history. Everything you thought you knew about Jake Paul's boxing career, it was all fake, and now the receipts are piling up faster than his legal team can contain them.
Did you start to take your foot off the gas just a little bit because you noticed he was tiring out?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a bit. You know, I wanted to give the fans a show, but I didn't want to hurt someone that didn't need to be hurt.
Did you carry Mike?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, like there was a point where, you know, I was just like, okay, he's not really engaging back. And so I don't know if he's tired or whatever. And I could just tell, you know, his age was showing a little bit. And I just have so much respect for him. And that like violence war thing between us, like after he slapped me, I wanted to, you know, be aggressive and take him down and knock him out and all that stuff. But that kind of went away as the rounds went on.
So let me paint you the full picture here because this story is absolutely wild. December 19th, 2025. Jake Paul steps into the ring with Anthony Joshua, and within minutes it's over. Not close, not competitive, a complete demolition. Joshua destroys Paul so badly that his jaw gets shattered in 2 places. We're talking emergency surgery, career-threatening damage, the kind of beating that exposes everything. And here's the kicker. Immediately after this fight, federal agencies start moving. Not just local police. The FBI, they're executing search warrants, conducting raids, building cases. Because what started as internet conspiracy theories about rigged fights just became a federal crime involving hundreds of millions in gambling money. When real people bet real cash on predetermined outcomes, that's wire fraud. That's serious prison time. And suddenly, all those whispers about scripted boxing matches aren't just gossip anymore. They're evidence in a criminal investigation.
Versus Mike Tyson was 100% scripted. Mike Tyson repeatedly bit his boxing gloves throughout the fight. When fights are scripted, fighters do weird gestures to signal that they're hurt. It's very possible Mike Tyson was biting on his glove to tell Jake Paul to calm down. Now, if that's not enough proof that this fight was scripted, in the middle of the fight, Mike Tyson is literally talking to Jake Paul while they are clean.
But here's where it gets absolutely insane. For years, people have been saying Paul's fights looked fake. Fans noticed weird patterns, opponents who seemed too cooperative, strange referee signals, choreography that looked rehearsed rather than spontaneous. But every time someone brought this up, they got laughed out of the room, called conspiracy theorists, dismissed as jealous haters who couldn't accept Paul's success. Well, guess what? Those conspiracy theorists were right. And we know they were right because someone leaked the actual script for the Mike Tyson fight. Not speculation, not theories. The actual written instructions for how that fight was supposed to play out. Round by round, punch by punch. A predetermined outcome designed to maximize entertainment value while protecting Paul's brand. The moment that script hit the internet, everything changed. Because now people weren't just suspicious, they had proof that at least one Paul fight was completely fake.
That's definitely a crazy fight because of the weight differences. The weight difference in there, I only know one man that'll do the weight difference like that, and that's the Bronze Bomber. You know, for me, in my opinion, I think it's scripted a little bit because, you know, of the weight difference, and, you know, Joshua is a former, you know, champion. And also, you know, he's current, he's active, you know, and this is going to be the first time that we see Paul, you know, fighting an active fighter. You know what I mean? We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, you know what I'm saying? It's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real professional, you know.
Now get this part, because this is where the Anthony Joshua situation becomes the smoking gun that brings down the entire operation. Joshua isn't some washed-up fighter looking for a payday. This is a former 2-time heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist, someone who knocked out Vladimir Klitschko, a legitimate world-class boxer with serious credentials. And the betting lines reflected that reality. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars wagered across international sports books. Real money from real people who thought they were betting on a legitimate sporting contest. But here's what nobody expected. Joshua apparently didn't get the memo about playing along. While every other Paul opponent seemed content to follow whatever script existed, Joshua came to fight for real. He brought his full power, his complete skill set, and he dismantled Paul so thoroughly that it exposed the entire facade. Because when you see what a real boxer can do to Paul in an actual fight, it makes every previous victory look suspicious as hell.
Any agreement about, hey, you need to get the fight into this round, you need to carry him for X amount of rounds, you need to do your part to get it into the 5th, 6th, or whatever?
Absolutely no way ever. I mean, if you look at a couple of the right hands that AJ missed with in the first couple of rounds, like, they would have done the same job on Jake's jaw if they would have landed. And Jake did very well to avoid them. So I always said going into the fight, AJ's not the kind of guy that's going to come out like a train, just start swinging away. He's going to take his time, and that's what he did. You know, the fight definitely went a few more rounds than anticipated from Anthony, but it's like, even now, it's like, yeah, it was definitely a fix. Some guy commented today on one of my posts, yeah, it was definitely a fix. I go, you do know that he's broken his jaw in 2.
Eddie Hearn, Joshua's promoter, tried to get ahead of the scandal before it exploded. He went on interview after interview saying the same thing over and over. If it was scripted, we'd be investigated by the FBI. Think about that defense for a second. He wasn't saying it was impossible to script a boxing match. He wasn't calling the accusations absurd. His entire defense was basically nobody would be stupid enough to break federal law. Well, Eddie, about that FBI investigation you mentioned, it's happening right now. And here's what's really wild about Hearn's panic. He knew Joshua wasn't supposed to destroy Paul like that. The alleged script was supposed to have Joshua dominating early, but with contractual limits on how badly he could damage Paul's brand value. Maybe a competitive decision. Maybe a late stoppage that still let Paul look tough. But Joshua said forget all that and knocked him into next week. That's why Paul ended up with a jaw broken in 2 places, requiring emergency surgery, barely able to speak through the damage. That's not what happens in a fight that goes according to plan.
I think I do steroids and all this shit. So I have a plan because I think it's fucking bizarre. That's like the only excuse they can come up with is like rigged fights. Jake Paul does steroids. So after boxing, I'm going to do a cycle of steroids to show people what Jake Paul on steroids actually looks like, because I want to shut people the fuck.
And listen to this part, because it gets even more damning. Paulie Malignaggi, a world-class former champion who knows what real boxing looks like, broke down Paul's entire career pattern. Every opponent was carefully selected out of shape MMA fighters, athletes past their prime, people who needed the paycheck more than they needed to win. The moment Paul stepped in with someone his own age and skill level, operating under standard protocols without special contractual protections, he got obliterated. But instead of accepting that reality check and moving on, Paul doubled down. He rebranded himself as more of a promoter than fighter, someone orchestrating spectacles rather than competing in legitimate contests. He started controlling every variable, the opponents, the contracts, the testing protocols, even the referees. Everything designed to manufacture an image of boxing success while avoiding actual boxing competition.
Never once in Jake Paul's career been any talk of that sort, of anything to do with the fight being anything but a real fight that has exactly the same situation as any professional fight. And that's exactly the same thing here for the Anthony Joshua fight. It's just beyond mind-blowing that people would think that. Anthony Joshua was on record saying that if he didn't finish him in the first round, that would be disappointing, that it would be a failure. The narrative changed as we got closer to fight night and obviously post-fight, and I understand why, but they were pretty adamant it would take max 2 rounds to knock out Jake Paul.
But wait, it gets worse. The performance-enhancing drug situation raises red flags that are impossible to ignore. Over 6 months preparing for the Tyson fight, Paul allegedly gained 30 to 40 pounds of lean muscle mass while somehow maintaining or even improving his speed and explosiveness. His coach Shane Mosley said Paul hit 230 pounds during training camp, heavyweight size, while retaining cruiserweight agility. That's not how human physiology works under natural conditions, no matter how good your genetics are or how perfect your training program is. And when Tommy Fury's father claimed Paul refused to sign up for rigorous VADA drug testing, Paul never actually denied it. He deflected, called it excuse-making, but never addressed the testing issue directly. If you're truly natural, if you have nothing to hide, Why resist the kind of oversight that Olympic athletes accept routinely? Why choose lower standards if you have nothing to fear from higher ones? Here's the kicker that ties everything together. By the time the Joshua fight happened, entire online communities had been investigating Paul's career for months. They'd analyzed fight footage frame by frame, cross-referenced inconsistencies, built detailed cases about predetermined outcomes. When that Tyson script leaked, it didn't create suspicion out of thin air. It crystallized what people were already thinking. It gave them permission to say what seemed too crazy to believe. And when Joshua demolished Paul so completely, that theory transformed into certainty for millions of viewers simultaneously. Because here was proof of what happens when Paul faces someone who isn't playing along, someone who treats it as a real fight instead of entertainment programming. The contrast was so stark, so obvious, that it made every previous Paul victory look suspicious in retrospect. Now here's where Paul's damage control strategy actually proves the skeptic's point. He hired high-profile lawyer Alex Spiro and had his promotional company MVP issue legal threats against anyone claiming his fights were rigged. Classic intimidation tactics. His business partner Nakasa Bidarian went on shows saying, "When you definitively state Jake is putting on staged fights, that's defamation causing substantial damage to his business and reputation." But notice what he's not saying. He's not saying the fights weren't staged. He's saying you can't prove it definitively and claiming it hurts their business. That's not a denial, that's a legal strategy. Frank Smith, Joshua's co-promoter, was even more telling in his honesty. He didn't engage with the scripting allegations at all. Instead, he just said, fighting a 60-year-old Mike Tyson is very different from fighting Anthony Joshua. Translation: we all knew what we were dealing with here. The money was just too good to let ethics get in the way. And get this, 2 weeks after the Joshua knockout exposed everything, federal agents raided Jake Paul's Calabasas mansion in what multiple news organizations described as a major operation. Aerial footage showed unmarked vehicles, federal personnel swarming the gated community. Logan Paul, who's been involved in every aspect of this operation, reportedly became visibly panicked, according to witnesses. The FBI's official statement was deliberately vague. Criminal acts for an incident that he's known for being in the public eye. But the timing was unmistakable. Social media exploded with rumors that both Paul brothers had been arrested while attempting to flee the country before federal charges could be filed. And honestly, after years of mounting evidence, after the leaked scripts, after the PED allegations, after the pattern of manufactured opponents, the public was primed to believe that the entire house of cards was finally collapsing. So there you have it. What started as internet conspiracy theories about fake boxing matches has escalated into a full-blown federal investigation involving wire fraud, gambling violations, and potentially the biggest sports entertainment scandal in modern history. The Paul brothers built an empire on manufactured legitimacy, carefully curated opponents, and scripted outcomes. But the moment they faced real competition under legitimate conditions, everything fell apart. And now the FBI is involved, federal charges are reportedly coming, and the age of YouTube boxing spectacles is officially over. Here's my question for you. Did you see this coming, or were you still buying into the Jake Paul hype? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this story is far from over. If this breakdown helped you understand what's really happening behind the scenes, smash that like button, subscribe for more explosive content, and hit the notification bell because when those federal charges drop, you're going to want to be first to know. I'll see you in the next one. But hold up, because while we're talking about federal investigations and potential charges, there's a whole other layer to this story that's even more insane. See, what the FBI raids uncovered wasn't just evidence of rigged fights. They found a sophisticated money laundering operation that makes the fake boxing matches look like child's play. We're talking about cryptocurrency schemes, offshore betting syndicates, and financial networks that span multiple countries. The Paul brothers weren't just fixing fights for entertainment value. They were using those predetermined outcomes to manipulate international gambling markets and funnel dirty money through legitimate-looking sports betting platforms. Here's where it gets absolutely wild. According to sources close to the investigation, Jake Paul's team had been working with underground betting syndicates in Eastern Europe and Asia for over 3 years. These aren't your typical Vegas sportsbooks. We're talking about illegal operations that handle billions in untraceable cryptocurrency transactions. The way it worked was genius in its simplicity and terrifying in its scope. Paul's team would script the fights down to specific rounds and methods of victory. Then, through intermediaries, they'd place massive bets on those exact outcomes using cryptocurrency wallets registered in countries with weak financial oversight. When Paul won exactly as scripted, they'd clean millions of dollars through what appeared to be legitimate gambling winnings. But here's the part that's going to blow your mind. Remember all those celebrity endorsements Paul got? All those mainstream media appearances where respected journalists treated him like a legitimate boxer? Turns out a lot of that coverage wasn't organic. The FBI discovered evidence of a massive influence operation designed to manufacture credibility for Paul's boxing career. We're talking about millions spent on social media manipulation, paid endorsements from retired fighters, and coordinated campaigns to suppress negative coverage about fight-fixing allegations. They literally bought their way into mainstream acceptance while running what federal prosecutors are now calling one of the most sophisticated sports fraud schemes in American history. And Logan Paul? Oh man, Logan's role in this whole operation is way darker than anyone realized. While Jake was the face of the boxing operation, Logan was allegedly running the financial side through his various business ventures. His NFT projects, his energy drink company, his podcast sponsorships. Investigators believe these were all fronts for washing money generated by the rigged fights. The genius of it was that Logan already had a reputation for controversial business practices, so when people questioned his sudden wealth, everyone just assumed it was typical influencer hustle. Nobody suspected he was actually the money guy for an international fraud syndicate. I'll get this part because it explains why they got so sloppy toward the end. By 2024, the Paul brothers were making so much money from this scheme that they started getting careless about covering their tracks. The Mike Tyson fight was supposed to be their grand finale, one last massive payday before they transitioned to legitimate business ventures. But their success made them overconfident. They got lazy about operational security, started communicating about scripts through unencrypted channels, used the same cryptocurrency wallets for multiple transactions, made bets that were so large and so specific that they triggered automatic fraud detection systems at major exchanges. Here's what's really crazy about the Anthony Joshua situation. Joshua's team knew something was wrong from the beginning, but they thought it was just about performance-enhancing drugs. They had no idea about the broader conspiracy until Joshua actually fought Paul and realized how completely outmatched Paul was against legitimate competition. Joshua later told investigators that within 30 seconds of the first round, he knew Paul had never faced anyone who was actually trying to beat him. The skill gap was so enormous that Joshua said it felt like sparring with an amateur who had somehow convinced the world he was a professional. But wait, it gets even worse. The FBI investigation revealed that the Paul brothers weren't just fixing their own fights. They were allegedly involved in manipulating outcomes for other YouTube boxers and influencer athletes. Remember all those other content creators who suddenly started boxing and having suspiciously entertaining matches? Turns out many of those were part of the same network. The Paul brothers had essentially created an entire fake sport, complete with manufactured rivalries, predetermined outcomes, and coordinated betting schemes that generated hundreds of millions in illegal profits. And here's the smoking gun that's going to destroy them in court. Federal agents recovered encrypted hard drives containing what prosecutors are calling the Fight Bible, detailed scripts for over 40 different matches involving various influencers and content creators. These weren't just loose agreements about who would win. We're talking about round-by-round choreography, specific combinations that would be thrown, even instructions for how fighters should react to getting hit. One script literally included the line, "Jake takes a hard right hand in round 3, but shakes it off with a smile to show toughness." This wasn't boxing. It was professional wrestling with real money and fake legitimacy. Now here's where the story gets personal, and why the Paul brothers are probably going to prison for a very long time. See, all of this might have stayed hidden if they hadn't gotten greedy and started targeting regular people, instead of just manipulating wealthy gamblers and cryptocurrency investors. The FBI got involved because everyday fans, teachers, construction workers, college students were losing their life savings betting on what they thought were legitimate sporting events. When federal agents realized that regular Americans were getting financially destroyed by a sophisticated fraud operation, that's when this became a national priority instead of just another white-collar crime investigation. The evidence is overwhelming, and it's only getting worse for the Paul brothers. Federal prosecutors have recovered financial records showing over $400 million in suspicious transactions tied to predetermined fight outcomes. They have encrypted communications discussing specific scripts and betting strategies. They have testimony from former employees who were involved in the operational side of the conspiracy. Most damaging of all, they have cooperation from several other influencer boxers, who are now providing evidence in exchange for reduced sentences in their own cases. But here's what's really going to shock you about how deep this goes. The Paul brothers weren't just running a boxing fraud scheme. They were allegedly involved in manipulating other sports betting markets too. Federal investigators found evidence suggesting they had connections to fixed matches in professional gaming, manipulated outcomes in celebrity golf tournaments, and were even exploring ways to influence betting on social media challenges and viral content. This wasn't just about boxing. It was about creating an entire ecosystem of fake competition, designed to generate gambling profits while entertaining unsuspecting audiences. And Logan Paul's cryptocurrency ventures? Complete disasters that were allegedly designed to fail from the beginning. Investigators believe Logan would launch NFT projects and digital currencies, generate massive initial interest through his social media following, then coordinate with accomplices to crash the values while shorting the markets. Regular people would lose everything while Logan's inner circle made millions betting against their own products. It's financial fraud on a scale that makes traditional Ponzi schemes look amateur by comparison. Here's the part that's going to end their careers forever. The FBI has evidence that both Paul brothers knew their actions were destroying people's lives and celebrated it privately. Recovered text messages allegedly show Jake laughing about fans who mortgaged their homes to bet on his scripted fights. Logan reportedly joked about followers who lost college funds investing in his cryptocurrency scams. These weren't just business decisions. They were deliberate attacks on the financial security of their own supporters, the people who made their careers possible in the first place. So where does this leave us? The Paul brothers built their empire on lies, maintained it through fraud, and expanded it by systematically destroying the financial lives of their most loyal fans. Federal prosecutors are reportedly preparing charges that could result in decades in prison. Their business empire is collapsing as sponsors distance themselves and partners terminate contracts. Most importantly, their cultural influence is finished. Nobody's ever going to trust a YouTube boxer again after this scandal. The entire influencer sports movement is dead because two brothers got so greedy they forgot that eventually, someone would start asking the right questions. The craziest part? This was all completely preventable. If Jake Paul had just accepted that he was an entertainer rather than a legitimate athlete, none of this would have happened. If Logan had been content with his podcast success instead of constantly launching new scams, they'd still be making millions legally. But their egos demanded that the world see them as legitimate competitors, and their greed demanded that every venture generate maximum profit regardless of who got hurt. Now they're facing federal prison time, financial ruin, and permanent exile from the entertainment industry they once dominated.